Please help me in welcoming Pastor Ben Miller and Dan.
Good morning. How you guys doing? Good to see you. Hey, we're going to take a seat. Dan and I were looking for a place to have coffee this morning, and this seemed to be the best spot, so we're glad that you could join us for a little bit of coffee. Hey, this is my friend Dan from Children's Cup. Dan, say hello.
Hello.
Good to see you. Good to see you. Now, we've known each other for a long time, but obviously, hey, there's a lot of people here that would have no clue who you are. Tell me who you are. Tell me about Children's Cup and how you end up getting the executive director position, and really how you got a title like that.
I think my favorite title is Ben Miller Fan Club President.
Yeah, there you go.
That is really. I got to say, you guys, I go to churches all over the country, like every Sunday just about I'm in a different church, and I don't say this everywhere I go. You have really cool pastors. I mean, they are, and the thing last night, I know this about you, but you said it last night, not in a way of saying it, but I caught it in how you were talking about it. You're a pastor for this city. You guys love this city. You're not just pastors of your church. You're pastors of this city. And I think that is a big distinction to make, because you love this city. It's not just about let's grow our church. It's let's get Ben to heaven. Yeah. So I just applaud you guys. You guys are great. Not every pastor is like that, so I don't say that everywhere. I don't lie most of the time. But my parents started Children's Cup back in '92, so almost 30 years. And I remember being a part of that in a very different way than I am now. But I get, in the last 2.5 years, the board asked me to take over leading it. And it's obviously a different perspective than being the son of the founders and being in, just out of Bible college and all this stuff. And now getting to lead and direct, it's a different thing, being in the director seat or pastor seat than it is just being the son of the pastor. And so there's some challenges with that. But the joy of it is, Mom and Dad's dream when they started it was, hey, they've been missionaries my whole life, so missions is in our blood. And so their dream was, if we could feed 300 or 400 kids, get it up to that number, 300 or 400 kids, and tell those kids about Jesus. My dad's thing was, hey, it's not good enough just to feed them. There's humanitarian agencies out there that do that stuff, and that's great, but we want to feed kids and tell them about Jesus. Yeah. We just don't want to see these kids get healthy. We want to see them go to heaven. And so that's what they did. And over the course of about 15 years, it grew to that. There was about 500-600 kids that they were feeding, telling about Jesus. Well, since then, God has taken that now to 9,500, almost 10,000 kids we're taking care of, and it is still feeding them and telling them about Jesus. A lot of kids that are going to heaven now. We've been at this long enough. There's a lot of young adults that are on their way to heaven because of what Children's Cup has been able to do. That's not a pat on our back. It's a pat on the back of the entire body of Christ here in the U.S. and in the local churches we work with there. So it is all about, it's a daily feeding, and it's a daily programs we do with these kids, but it's all pointed at getting them ready for the rest of their life and getting them ready for eternity.
Right. Well, you've hopefully, if you've been around very long, you've heard us talk about, Children's Cup sponsor, or hanging out with them in Honduras. We've talked a lot about Honduras. Honduras is just a small slice of the pie of what Children's Cup does. Now, it's our slice of the pie, and that's why we focus on it. But really, the reach of Children's Cup is global. Where else are you guys?
It's two main areas. Southern Africa, we've got about half of the kids, about 5,000 kids there in a little tiny country called Eswatini, and then in South Africa. And then the other half are in Latin America, in Honduras, and then in Belize, Dominican Republic, and Mexico.
Yeah, so it's amazing. And one of the things I loved about Children's Cup is the strategy. Yeah, you start with food, right? Because nobody's going to listen if you're not going to feed them. And you start with food, but take us from there. Talk to us about that mind, body, soul strategy.
Yeah, so we're all made up of body, mind, spirit. That's it. That's where we are.
I already got it wrong.
But you started last night with dinner. We went to dinner last night. Now we're doing church, and I slept last night. So with body, mind, spirit.
We're figuring this out.
But it is caring for the whole child. It's not just enough to feed them. Like I said, we want to see them go to heaven, and they've got a life ahead of them. This is the reality. I've sat down. I don't know if you did this when we went to Honduras, but I love asking a kid, what do you want to be when you grow up? Kids, if you don't want me to ask you that, then don't hang out with me after church, because I'm going to ask you, what do you want to be when you grow up? It's just interesting to me. I'm curious about it. And I've had one kid about 11 years old just started coming to a care point. It's the place where we set up to feed kids, so every day they can come and get that meal and other programming. So this one kid had just started coming. I said, what do you want to be when you grow up? And she says, well, I don't know what you're talking about. She didn't say those words, but her whole look was just blank. Never thought about growing up. She came to the care point looking to survive.
Right.
Her thought was, how do I survive today? Where am I going to eat? Asked another kid, same day, a little later, and this is another probably 11, 12-year-old boy who'd been coming to the care point for a while. And I said, what do you want to be when you grow up? And he says, well, if I grow up, I want to be a teacher. I was like, that's cool. You want to be a teacher. Like, I don't really care what they want to be, just the fact that they have a dream. But then I was like, time out, rewind that.
Yeah.
You said, if I grow up. And I thought, we're making progress. We've still got some work to do. So that body, mind, and spirit translates to giving hope, inspiring dreams, changing worlds. We want to see these kids get hope that they're going to survive, and then inspire them to dream of doing something, and that something would be to change their world from the inside out. It's not enough just to feed. It's not enough just to educate. You also have to make sure their spirits are growing, and that's where the local church comes in. Right. Why we love partnering with a good church like you guys, because you're all about local church too.
Yeah.
It's a local church in Teopasente.
Which I love that the care points link up with the local church. That's the goal behind it, is they work hand in hand together in the community. Since the year 2000, we as a church have done 24 mission trips. We love being able to reach out globally and not just send money. Hey, by the way, we could send resource, we could send money, but there's something about getting on site, getting your face on site. Now, obviously, through this last year and a half, we've canceled a lot of our mission trips, haven't been able to go on them, but we're all sitting here like everybody's itching. We did a survey recently and said, hey, when the borders open, are you ready to go and win? And it's like so many people were like, the moment it's open, I want to get back. I want to go to Honduras. I want to go to Ireland. I want to go. And we really feel as a church that our heart is not just for our own community, but it is global. That's part of the reason we're even taking time today to talk about this and just kind of big picture it to say, hey, listen, it's also time for us to get back and get our face on site. It's so important. Now, we linked up, this is maybe 2.5, 3 years ago with Dan. I know he texted me and said, hey, would you like to go to Honduras? We've been praying for really something to do in Central America. And he texted me like 2 seconds later. I said, I'm there. When is it? I'm there. I'm going to do it. And then I text right back and said, I have to ask my wife. And so, yeah, I'm figuring it out. And anyway, I ended up, we said, hey, let's do it. And I linked up with you, a whole bunch of pastors. And we just went around and we visited different care points, different churches all over Honduras. And just to see what was happening. And I know that you had just recently took over as executive too. It was really cool to be on the trip and see you.
It was my first time to Honduras too.
First time to Honduras, yeah. And so it's like your dad had, the ministry was doing amazing things, but it was really cool to see, you hadn't seen with your eyes the impact yet. You hadn't been on site yet. And so I know during that time you went to Africa, you came back you were visiting all the places, and it was cool just to see your heart just like, wow. I remember there was a moment in Los Plancitos where you just said, I never imagined how amazing it was. I've heard stories, but just seeing it with your own eyes changed everything. And you cried a lot on that trip. You're kind of a big baby,
That's true.
Yeah, so we linked up in Honduras. We visited a whole bunch of care points. And I remember as we went around care points, the question was, hey, what's God doing? What's God speaking? And then in the evenings, we just talk about it and just say, hey, how can we help? What does help look like? One of the areas that we went into that we are now really invested in is called Los Plancitos. Now, I have a picture of Honduras up here on the slide. Honduras is in Central America. This is a good little geography class for you guys who went to public school. And this is Honduras.
Wow.
Yeah, I did it. I went there.
You
And
just did.
I'll go there again. And so Honduras is in Central America and surrounded by other Central American countries. And so you can see kind of the bottom part of this in the south side is Tegucigalpa. That's the main capital. Now I want to zoom in one more time. Outside of Tegucigalpa, about a half an hour up in the hills, is a little town called Teopasente. Teopasente is the kind of the hub in which these guys are reaching out. Now we are investing in Los Plancitos, which is another 45 minutes by either 4x4 vehicle or dirt bike to get out into the coffee fields. Right. And so we just kept traveling out and out and out. And there's an established care point church facility in Teopasente. It's an absolutely great place. Had a great lunch there. Had really good chicken mole, which I'm a fan of chicken mole. Come on. And so, but from there, these guys are trying to reach the people who are in essence unreachable. And for several months out of the year, you actually can't even access that area because of the rainy season. The only way that you could access access, bring food, and create a care point and connect with them is if you had a really nice dirt bike. So we actually, as a church, this is about 2 years ago, convinced two crazy people to ride motorcycles. Here's Levi and Eric. We fundraised. We bought motorcycles. We shipped them down to Texas. I met them down there, and they drove those motorcycles from the border in Texas all the way down through Guatemala, all the way through Mexico, through Guatemala, and into Honduras. Really easy trip, just,
No problems at borders or anything.
I think they had paced it out at like 9 days, and it was a month they were gone. And
the hitchhiking back after they left the bikes probably added a little bit to it.
Dear Jesus, please don't let them die. No one will trust me again. And and so we got those bikes down there and gave them there. Obviously, put awesome like panniers on the side. And so just to be able to say, hey, listen, we want to make it possible to reach. And it's not, when you say food, you're fundraising for food. It's not this idea that you do a once-off event and bring food. It's that you're creating a care point in which every day these kids are able to come. They're able to get nutrients. They're able to connect. And we wanted to help with a new thing. We actually asked the question too. I remember sitting around a table and said, hey, we could send bikes, we could send money, or we could sponsor. Like, tell me about sponsorship. What did it look like, and why is sponsorship so important? That was one of the questions that we'd asked.
Sponsorship is like, it's $39 a month. There's a bunch of different organizations sponsor kids, and some of them are great. What we try to do is to make it not just be about the $39 a month.
Right.
It is about the relationship opportunity you have with that child. It blesses you. It blesses the child. It really is a two-way street, the opportunity you have, the difference it makes for a kid knowing they're sponsored. I had a story, Michael, my guy that works with us, he's here. Wave everybody, Michael. He showed me a story last night. I had not heard this story yet, but it was a kid at Teo Pacenti, young girl, came to the care point looking for a meal, and she found she was just hungry, trying to figure out how she's going to put things together. She had been rejected by her dad. Her dad left, offensively rejecting her. Her mom was unable to take care of her, rejected her. All her life had been a trail of rejection, and she felt that. She comes to the care point looking for food. She finds hope. She finds acceptance, but she still, as soon as she finds out there's like all these other kids are sponsored, she's not sponsored. I'm rejected again. That whole thought, the enemy just lying to her all the way through. And so she actually talks to the care point facilitator there, and the facilitator just says, let's pray. So they prayed, and like not long after, they get word that somebody sponsored this little girl.
That's awesome.
And she's like, at first celebrating, then she's like, no, they're just lying to make me feel better. I don't really have a sponsor. It's not true. Not long later, I think it was the Knicks team that came into the country to visit. Her sponsor's on that trip.
I love that.
Yeah, I think that's not God. She meets this sponsor, and of course, it's just like, I cannot believe. She's like lit up in the moment, like it's really real. I am accepted. But then the facilitator said that ever since then, her whole life is different. She's given her heart to Jesus, but that difference of knowing she's accepted by somebody actually cares so much. It's that relationship. And you think, yeah, I'm going to make a difference in a kid's life. It does the same for you. That relationship is a two-way street. So when we say sponsorship, we're saying, hey, let's do more than just make sure we're funding the care for this kid. We're saying, let's make sure we're helping this kid actually grow up knowing they're loved and accepted. And you get to do that with the relationship.
Yeah. We started a couple years ago trying to, in essence, break new ground into Los Plancitos, which is a little spot. There was no care point. We have a few pictures here. When we first got there, there's just someone built a tin shed over the little parking lot next to them, and this is where they met. They would start feeding kids, and so we just said, hey, we want to get behind your effort. We want to help you, and so we started sponsoring kids. There's in this community, there's 57 kids that are now sponsored in the last 2 years, which is amazing. We as a church sponsored 37 of them. How cool is that?
Amazing.
And so we just say, hey, we want to help and establish this work. So not only are we trying to to solidify a food chain to make sure that they have access to be there every day to connect with them. Now during COVID, this one thing is like looking at the care points. Obviously stuff changed in COVID, but it was almost an opportunity for people in this area. Tell us how that changed.
Well, the normal rhythm of things for us at our care points is the kids after school will come by and they'll get their meal. Sometimes on the way to school, get a meal. But then we're doing our programming after school and helping them with their schoolwork and teaching about Jesus, all that stuff. And just loving on the kids. Well, COVID stops that. It have shut down all gatherings of people. We all know how that flows. And it was intense there. They were very, very strict about it. So we had to effectively close the care point and go mobile. We're taking food to them And now here's the thing. This is true everywhere. Everywhere in the world, it's just a principle that there's an African proverb that says, when the elephants fight, the ants lose. It's the poor kids that lose the most in a situation like COVID or in a situation of extreme poverty. When things get in upheaval, they're the last ones to get help. And so you take the situation. Some of these kids, it's not just poverty. It's like this one girl I was telling you about where she's rejected by her family. Right. There's incredible abuse. And I don't like harping on the details of the horrible situations they're in, but you can let your imagination run wild, and those kids are facing it. And the truth of the matter is the care we're giving them is sometimes the only bright spot in their day, in their life. So what we did, we started taking during COVID, started taking that to them. They couldn't even come by and pick up their food. At some points, we had to actually take food to them. And so we've done it. We've made sure they're getting cared for. But in those moments where we're delivering food to their homes, we found an opportunity to not just serve the kid, but to serve the family, the aunts, uncles, grandparents, moms, dads, brothers. We go in and have had moments. You guys helped us with Christmas a couple of years in a row now. A couple of years ago, it was a big Christmas party. All the kids come and hang out together and pile on each other, slip and slides and all this stuff. And we couldn't do that during COVID. So this last year, what we did was we said, let's take Christmas to the kids. So same thing, we take a Christmas box to the family with scripture and food and presents and stuff, and take that to the home. In those encounters with the families, there were so many lives changed. In Mexico, there's one grandma. She's a good lady who's just never given her heart to Jesus. We go into that. The team recognizes this and talks to her, ends up praying with her. She gives her heart to Jesus. 2 weeks later, she dies. Wow. She's in heaven today because of opportunities like that we probably wouldn't have done it that way had it not been for COVID. So I'm not like, thank God for COVID, but I do thank God for the opportunities He's created for us, just like you guys have had.
Right. Yeah. During the last year and a half, like obviously, the world has been affected in different ways. And, like I said, since the year 2000, we've done 24 different missions trips. And in the last year and a half, we've had to cancel all of our trips. I mean, we've had 3 trips to Ireland that we've canceled. We've had trips to Honduras, and we've just had to say, hey, listen, we can't do them. Our heart through this time has been to resource and help, which is amazing to see that your teams on the ground are saying, hey, we're going to take it and still reach out and do this. One of the reasons, too, that we're just even taking time to talk about this today is to remind ourselves that there's more out there in the world. Sometimes we get so focused on our own community. In this last year and a half, we've been in this, our community's been in this like protect yourself mode. And it's good for us to remind ourselves is that the Great Commission actually requires us to lift our head back up and to see those people around us, not just globally, but also in our own community. And so there's something amazing about the gospel that it spreads as soon as we can lift our chin up and see the person next to us. Because it doesn't transfer through food, it doesn't transfer through money, it transfers through face-to-face contact. And so I step back and say, hey, listen, like we have been able to stay connected over the last year and a half and resource and help, but there comes a point where it's like, man, it's like I want to get back to Global Great Commission. I want to get back to mobilization. At one point, there was 75% of the people within this church had gone on a missions trip. Now, the church was smaller, so it was a lot easier to hit that 75%, okay? But the reality is that I still think, I still look at it and go 50% is a great goal. Like, if you have never gone on a missions trip, you need to go on a missions trip. And maybe it's not Honduras. Maybe it's somewhere different. Maybe it's Ireland, which we're going to be talking about Ireland here at the end of August. Noel and Heather coming in from Ireland, and so we're going to be talking about what's happening in Ireland. But like, I look at it and go, man, you need to get out of your own life and go and experience somebody. Because when you do that, it's amazing when you come back, you realize the opportunities you've been missing in your own neighborhood. Yeah. Now, there's a beauty, we were discussing this last night, is that in Central Oregon, there's such a beauty in the landscape in which we live. Unless there's smoke, then you can't see it. But without the smoke, like we live in a beautiful area. And so many times we can get distracted with the beauty around us that we forget that the real beauty in life is actually in people. And God created us in His image, and we can miss the beauty in the people around us. That is when it becomes real, is when we can actually see it in the image that God's created in those around us.
Yeah, and sometimes it's not easy to see because people don't, I don't always act beautiful. I am, but I don't always act beautiful, and my wife has to dig through a little bit to find it. But, there's people at work that irritate you. There's somebody that's undermining all the things you're doing to help, and you should get credit, but they take the credit, or they cut things short. There's people in your family that irritate you. You just don't want to talk to them. But they're made in God's image. Therefore, there's beauty. And I think part of our assignment as human beings that are still on this earth, God hasn't chosen to take us to heaven yet, is because there's somebody who we need to excavate that beauty. Yeah. And these kids that we work with, they're very much that case. They're fun, they're great to play with, but then you dig a little deeper, you find, man, there's a lot of ugly in there that they're dealing with, and we try to excavate the beauty. Right. But it's just the same here in Bend. Wherever you live, there are people in your world that God has put in your world. He's put you in their world so that you can draw that beauty out. I think Jesus did that a lot. Yeah. When he fed the 5,000, think about this. He could have, you all know the story. Jesus fed 5,000 people with like 5 loaves, 2 fish. He could have ordered Domino's and fed everybody, right? He could have waved his hand and said,
Domino's didn't exist.
Well, probably not. He could have made it exist. He could have waved his hand and be like, you're not hungry, and it's all good, then go home. But what did he do? He chose to use a chubby little kid's lunch. I was a chubby kid. I can say that, okay? Don't be offended. How do I know he was a chubby kid? 5 loaves of bread in his lunch bag.
Yeah, I never thought about that.
Right?
Yeah.
2 fish, 5 loaves of bread. That's a big kid. My mom sent me a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Come on, Mom. I'm 200 pounds in 3rd grade. So, all right, on to the point. Why did Jesus choose to use that kid's lunch? He could have done it any other way, but he said, you know what? I'm going to draw out some beauty in this kid. This kid thinks he's overlooked and insignificant. Right. I'm telling you, from that day forward, that kid knew that God had used him. Yeah. He could stand up to anybody. God used me. Like that, to me, is what Jesus is all about. You think you're insignificant. You think you're underqualified. You think you can't do this. I can't go to Honduras and make a difference. I can't sponsor a kid. They're not going to write a letter and got to say something that means something. God's like, I got that. I see beauty in you. Let me excavate it. Let me draw it out and use you to change somebody's life in Honduras or Bend. I don't care where. He wants to use you to change people's lives.
Jesus did this all the time, and it's really a good encouragement and a challenge for us. Even the lady at the well. Like when they all walked up to the lady at the well, they all just saw a person. And in fact, they weren't even, there was like this distance between them because she was a different nationality in essence, and a different culture and a different belief system, and they just kind of wrote her off. But Jesus saw a beauty in her that nobody else did. And he took the time to excavate that, to connect with her. Yeah. And if you've ever read that story, she all of a sudden is seen by Jesus. And that moment changed everything. In fact, she lived in a town in which everybody saw her, thought she was ugly, thought she was gross, thought she was horrible. And something changed in her when Jesus unearthed that in her, where she went back and she started speaking to the whole town. Who the town saw changed. Like something just radically changed about her. All of a sudden it's like, oh my word, like this person's different. I wonder, I look at it and go, how many people in our neighborhood are we looking at as if they're just another person, right? I saw what signs they put up during the political season. I saw the thing that they did here during this, and I saw that. And we almost have this opinion of someone that it's an ugly opinion, or we don't like them, or, they took this out of my yard and I'm going to get back at them, or whatever it is, right? But do we take the time like Jesus to go and unearth some of that beauty? Every good gift that the Lord has given you has come in a person. Sure, he gives us, we look at it and go, oh, God supplied this and he did this, but every good thing that you ever have came in a gift of a person. That's how he supplies. Sometimes you get to be that person, and then sometimes, hey, guess what? Somebody gets to come and to be that for you. And I look at it, man, we celebrate what God is doing in Honduras, but if he can bring hope there, I think he can also bring hope here. Yeah, and as we sit here today, it's maybe in our own situation, it's I need hope too. Maybe I don't need a meal, but maybe I need hope. Maybe I need that. I don't know what my future looks like. I don't know what that looks like. And so I love when really the Great Commission, when just the purity of the gospel can actually take root, whether it's globally or whether it's in our own community, we want to be a part of it. It's our heart as a church to not just reach our own community, which we desire to do, but it's time now after a year and a half of being self-consumed as a culture, as protecting ourselves as a culture, as making sure that we're safe as a culture. There comes a point where we have to raise our heads up and look around us and say, hey, wait a minute. There's still a world that so needs Jesus. There's a beauty, not in the landscape, but in the people of those that are around us. And it starts here with us, but then we look at it and say, hey, listen, it's time to get back and be a part. And I appreciate all that you guys are doing in Children's Cup. And I know, like I said, we're in Honduras, which is just a slice of the pie. We've endeavored to say, hey, how can we help? I want to encourage you to even, if it's not this year, in the next couple of years to say, even make a commitment to yourself. I want to go on a missions trip. Like, I want to go. I want to go somewhere. Pick a place that's awesome and go there. Ask God, Lord, where should I go? What should I do? There's something about getting outside of yourself that reminds you when you get home to get outside of your own house and walk around your neighborhood in the same way with purpose, because we carry hope everywhere we go. And I love how effective Children's Cup is. Go ahead.
And going on a mission trip does not mean you have to get up and preach at a church service every night. It's like, literally, do you know how to love a kid? If you hate kids, come anyway. You'll love kids by the time you're done. But here's the thing: our workers, our team, the volunteers that come and cook the food, they need you. They need the encouragement of just knowing somebody cares enough to take a week off and come see us, love on us, pray with us, make a connection. You don't have to be Ben and Rachel. I mean, like, they're superheroes, whatever. You don't have to be that. Sorry, not whatever. You actually are superheroes. You're great. You don't have to be a preacher. You just go and let the love of Jesus flow over. There's not a talent or gift set you have to qualify for a trip.
Yeah. And a good reminder, I think this week, it's good for us to lift our heads back up and look for that beauty in those around us. The ones that are irritating us, the ones that don't look perfect, the ones that it's like, oh man, I got to give this another go. In regards to Honduras, I do want to say there's 4 ways today. Like, if you're saying, hey man, I would love to be a part of what's going on. What's cool is this: as a church, you're already a part. Like, you could do nothing and you're still a part of what's going on. And so, we have over the last, was it 2 years, a year and a half during all of this stuff, we've continued as a church to sow in. Last year we gave towards money in a food shortage because they couldn't get it shipped in, and so they were trying to find it on site. We gave towards that. We've done Christmas stuff. Like, we as a church, you as a church, us as a church, we're already generous in resourcing, and we just want to say, be involved. One thing I would encourage you is, like, especially if there's kids in the room, give 50 cents, give $1 and say you were a part. Like, just be a part, because you're part of that collective of what we're doing. Here, what we did on Thursday is we did a cornhole tournament. It's one of the best ways to raise money, because then we get to play cornhole and get second place. Yeah, I know. It was hard throwing that game. Just, I couldn't go year 3 on first place.
3 in a row as the pastor. That's a little bit
I was getting a lot of
iffy.
heat. And so, we did a cornhole fundraiser on Thursday. We raised $5,000 towards our goal of 250,000 meals into Honduras. In Honduras, they ship 1 million. They provide 1 million meals every year. Could you imagine? Like, just that on a scale alone is amazing. And we want to take a quarter of that. We raised $5,000 on Thursday night. We already raised a couple thousand in first service. And we just want to encourage you, like, hey, if you would like to be a part of that, give on the app. Write it, given the thing. Just be a part, even if it's small. Some of you guys might say, hey, listen, I can do $5, I can do $50. I would encourage you to be a part of it in any way that you can. But then, hey, maybe there's someone in the room that says, I got this. Like, I'd like to do 250,000 meals myself. For service, we had someone text me while I was praying. Great job. And they're just like, hey, whatever the shortage is, I'll make up the rest, which is amazing. So we're looking at it and we're going, hey, listen, we're almost to our $10,000 goal. I look at it and go, why can't we go over and switch from 250,000 just hit 500,000 meals? Like, as a church, we can do that. That's within our realm. And so I want to encourage you, like, to be generous in that way. I'm giving towards it. I would encourage every person to do something small, whatever that is. Another way is sponsorship. We sponsor 37 of the 57 kids that are sponsored in Los Plancitos, and there's 20 more kids to be sponsored. If you're like, man, I'd like to be a part of that, then outside, they'll talk to you about that. If you'd like to be a part of sponsorship, then sponsor. We'd encourage you as well to jump in on the Great Commission here, but then also be praying for it globally. You know that there's a big world out there, and we're not the only community who has suffered loss in this last year and a half. And it's time for us to pick up our eyes and say, all right, how can we be a help? How can we be an encouragement? How can we be a joy in all things? And then I'm super excited to announce on next March, the end of March, beginning of April, we're going to run a mission trip again. Yeah. So I would encourage you, if you want to know more about that, you can go on the app and just fill out a Connect card. Say, I want to know more about Honduras. That doesn't mean you're signing up. Just means I want to know more. Or you can fill in a Connect card, throw it in the back, and just say, hey, I want to know more about Honduras. We'll have more information coming out. But the end of March, beginning of April, and those dates will fluctuate a little bit on each end because there's travel. and then and we'll see kind of how we lay it all out. But it's right around that time. That's the dates that we're in Honduras serving, but we have to get there. So if you're interested in that, say, man, I'd like to be a part of that. What's really cool is there's 37 kids that are sponsored, and I can just tell you, like, those spots are going to fill up really, really quick because we all want to go see the kids we sponsor. Yeah.
And if you're online only, you can sponsor a kid. You just go to childrenscup.org/bend, and all the same kids that are on the cards here. You can do it online here if you want, whatever, but you can do it online too. childrenscup.org/bend.
That's awesome. I love that. So there's ways to get involved, and I want to encourage you to remind yourself, hey, let's pick up our heads. Let's start to think globally. Because the moment you realize you get your head back up is the moment, too, you can actually see a little bit more of the horizon. And so there's something important about that we want to see the beauty in other people. And then also not just say, hey, we want to invest globally, but like to remind yourself, we live in a community that's so desperate for Jesus. And we want to reach out to those people, but there's going to be a point where you have to realize, all right, I'm done being irritated with you, and I'm ready to start loving you the way Jesus loved people. And so it's a challenge for us today. I want to do this. I want to say thank you, Dan, for being here, for all that you're doing. Let's give him a round of applause as he's here. And then another person texts me while I'm about ready to pray, and that's okay. I want to pray over this right now. This is our time where we normally bring our tithes and offerings, and if you brought that today and you want to give that, you can just dictate that as tithes and offerings. But also, just there's an opportunity if you're giving on the app, scroll down to Honduras or in the back, just to say, hey, I want to be a part. I'd love to be a part of that, and we're gonna hit that goal and help love and supply. But then also remind yourself, if you're interested, hey man, I really want to sponsor a kid. We sponsor a kid, and 39 kids are sponsored out of here, which is amazing. Just the connection of that. So I want to pray over this offering. Whether you would say, hey, listen, I want to give towards Honduras, or I'm here to even give my own tithes and offerings. We as a church, we are a generous church. We are a very generous church, and what's cool is that by you being here, you just get to be a part of that. And I just want to say thank you. Thank you for your generosity, and thank you for your heart to not just think locally and think about self, but to also think globally. We as a church have given thousands and thousands of dollars away during the pandemic to churches all over the world to help them in their need, and we're going to continue to do so because it's the godly and the right thing to do. And it's how his kingdom advances, is by us encouraging and loving those around us. I want to pray. Jesus, thank you. Thank you for all that you're doing in Honduras through Children's Cup, through Dan and the whole team down there. Lord, thank you that we get to be a part of someone else's story, God's story. We get to be a part of encouraging them and even bringing the food and the resources that they need, but also being able to supply for the people that are there on site, praying with them, loving them, and leading them to Jesus. Thank you, Lord, for all that you're doing. We just pray that as we open up our hearts and our minds to think globally, to think about kingdom all over this world, Lord, would we also get excited about your kingdom coming in our own neighborhoods, your kingdom coming in our own workplaces, that we would lift our eyes this week. And for those that we would say, hey, man, I'm not finding beauty in this person, that would be able to take time and just kind of unearth some of that, be able to connect with them and to be able to see your image in the people around us. We love you. We give our hearts to you today. And we just thank you that we get to be a part in making a difference here and in the entire world. In Jesus' name we say, amen. Amen.